Elevate your happy hour at the Library of Congress, which is open late on Thursdays for Live at the Library. Enjoy cocktails in the iconic Thomas Jefferson Building alongside live music, author talks, exhibits, and more. It's all free, eclectic, and inspired by the library's collections. On deck for August are outdoor film screenings, a K-pop night, and folk concert with Amanda Pascali. Plan your next night out at loc.gov/live.
Today on CityCast DC, Trump has unveiled a $22.5 billion vision to remake Dulles International Airport, with plans to replace its iconic people movers, build a new passenger train, and totally transform one of the region's biggest transportation hubs. But how much of this is actually likely to happen? Who will pay for it? And what could it mean for the millions of people who use Dulles every year? Kriston Capps, writer for Bloomberg's CityLab, joins us to break down the proposal and what it means for DC and beyond. Today is Thursday, August 6th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Kriston, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I was reading about Trump's big plan for Dulles Airport, and I guess my first question is, why is he doing this? Is this just more of Trump kind of wanting to put his stamp on all things DMV, or is Dulles really in need of renovation?
You know, it's a complicated question. We've seen so many projects that Trump has done in DC that this one almost seems like, well, here he goes again. He's done the reflecting pool. He put his name on the Kennedy Center. The National Guard of American Heroes is on the way, and on and on and on. But this one's really different. I would actually not characterize this as Donald Trump's plan. I would characterize this as United Airlines' plan. And by, inviting the president into the design project for something that they want to do, a project that is much, much, much larger and more expensive and more involved than any of these other things, they've got a real ally on their side and maybe clearance on a lot of really challenging federal approvals.
Yeah, you've just talked about the scale of this project. I want to start with that number that I was reading about, $22.5 billion. Based on the plans that we've seen, what will that amount of money do toward this renovation project?
It's a lot. I mean, that is really the cost of building an airport from scratch. So for that cost, that's about what Qatar paid to build its airport. It's like glistening global hub. So Dulles is one, really looking at rebuilding from the bottom sub-basement level up, and two, building something at a much bigger scale than any airport we really have in the United States.
I was going to say, just the idea that what Qatar spent to build their entire airport from the ground up, that's what's going into this renovation. What's the plan here?
Well, all right, should we talk about the people movers?
Let's talk about, I know people tuning in probably have their own opinions about the people movers. Let's go there. Let's take it to the people movers.
So, that's kind of like the original sin of Dulles International Airport. They designed Eero Saarinen, the architect who designed it, who gave us that incredible swooping terminal, had this visionary plan that was going to save a lot of people a lot of time, save them a lot of exhaust by, building an airport that didn't have long concourses, by building an airport where you get into your gate by the gate moving, by the people mover taking. So we've all, anyone who's flown in has kind of dealt with this. And when you're coming back from an international flight, it's like this, exhausting final step to have to get onto a people mover. I personally find them very charming, but Dulles has kind of had to build around them for decades, and it has come up with this kind of hodgepodge of unsatisfying solutions. It's a lot of Band-Aids. So with this design, what United Airlines and the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority want to do is to tear it down and build up from the bottom. So you would have, 5 total concourses connecting the terminals and a train running beneath them. It's a smart idea. It's what you see in like Atlanta, which is a really good, efficient airport. And it's going to cost a lot of money.
Do we have a sense of where that $22.5 billion is coming from?
Yes. Edward Russell, who's a reporter he writes this really popular Substack called Airport Architecture. Very popular among both in the architecture community and in the aviation community. It's like that perfect intersection. He was the first to report on these details. He's been covering this for months. He broke the story, I want to say back in May. He was able to get the price breakdown of $90 cost per enplanement. So what that means is like passengers are going to pay for this $22.5 billion development at the end of the day. And the way it works is that for every ticket sold, every ticket flying into or out of Dulles, some amount of that will go towards the debt. This is a figure we call cost per enplanement. And Edward Russell of Airport Architecture of that Substack really broke it down and found that $90 of every ticket in the future is going to go towards this debt. Now, that means it's an average. So it's not like if you're flying from Dulles to Boston, it's going to tack on $90, but just the average is going to be $90 per ticket. And that's a lot. What United Airlines will tell you is that there are going to be so many more people flying through Dulles that you're not going to feel that sting from the $22 billion development.
Kriston, am I right to be skeptical of this? I see a world where they say, hey, listen, you're not even going to notice. It's going to be so good for you. You're not even going to notice as a ticket buyer going through Dulles that there's a little bit of an extra charge tacked on. How can I take that to the bank?
I think there's a lot to be skeptical about. To United's credit, right? Dulles has had amazing traffic. The last 2 years have both set records for passengers flying in and out of the airport. But at the end of the day, Dulles is ultimately a destination airport. What airport experts described to me as an O&D, origin and destination. It means like you're either flying to Washington or you're leaving Washington, but you're not traveling through. It's not a connection hub. You know, people don't make a connection in Dulles, really. And so that's a limit on how many people are ultimately going to use this airport. You know, it's not in the middle of the country. It's on the East Coast. So I don't know how many more people are going to be flying into and out of Washington over the coming years and decades, but it's going to have to be a tremendous increase for this to work.
I know people might have their feelings about the people movers. You find them charming. I find them charming in theory until I'm coming back from an international flight. I forget about them every time. Once I get off the plane, I'm like, oh yeah, this. I find it less charming in those instances. As far as folks who actually use this airport with regularity, are there kind of common issues that people associate with Dulles that they're, other than the people movers, that they're interested in sort of revamping or fixing?
Definitely. You can just look at the solutions that they've dealt with over all these years. Concourse C and D was supposed to be temporary. That was never supposed to be a permanent building, and now we've been using it for many years. The biggest issue that I think a lot of Washingtonians have with Dulles is that it's really far. We're going to try to fly out of National, right? If we can afford it. People who live further east are looking at BWI. And, you know, whatever Donald Trump may do, and he has incredible powers to transform this city, he can't really move Dulles that much closer to DC. So that's always going to be a sticking point. We're sure United's plans can make Dulles a better airport. I think it will be much more efficient. I don't have any doubts that it can be improved and that it'll save people time. It'll make it easier. It'll make it more comfortable. They'll have some crazy United Polaris lounge and apparently the world's largest parking structure. It's just a question of whether the cost is going to be right for Washingtonians. And when they say things like, we can build this $22.5 billion airport in 8 years by 2034. Or as Donald Trump said during the press conference the other day, we can do it in 2 years. Then I start to question whether the people planning this really have our best financial outcomes in mind.
I mean, let's go there. You just need to look at some of the other projects that Trump has sort of been involved in when it comes to renovation in DC. The reflecting pool, I don't think I need to tell anybody that is, let's just say, not gone as planned, perhaps in a way that is not ideal. When you look at the East Wing, how the scope of this project just continues to increase, do folks have a reason to be concerned that, hey, this is just going to be another project where the budget keeps increasing, the amount of time keeps increasing, the sort of scope of this thing might just get bigger and bigger and bigger?
We've potentially seen that creep already. A 32,000 unit parking structure, it does not seem to be the kind of thing that airport passengers at Dulles really need. I could be wrong. We could be proven wrong. I think President Donald Trump can get very hands-on with an arch or a reflecting pool in a way that he can't with an underground airport train. Does that make sense?
It does. I sort of see what you mean.
In a way, I feel like United CEO Scott Kirby has really figured out something. He's really unlocked something here. That if you bring in the president to come in and kind of look at the big models and kind of like play around with the aesthetics and the details, that you can get incredible approvals. You can get the full White House and the federal government saying, we are doing this. That is not normally how this would go. Usually, Dulles would have to present ideas. They'd go through a ton of reviews for engineering, environmental review, design review, all kinds of things. And this would take decades. These would be done in phases. These capital improvements wouldn't just be a decision to completely, tear down and build up like a gut level, like a house renovation. It would be really careful. And I think that United CEO has unlocked something here by bringing in the president and saying, we're going to do this his way. That's what Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said during the press conference on Thursday. He said, we're going to do this at the speed of President Trump. And that really sticks with me because the things that have happened at the speed of President Trump so far in Washington have not thrilled Washingtonians, I'll put it that way.
So one of the things that is kind of iconic about Dulles is that futuristic, swooping design. Will that be changing as part of this plan?
It better not. I think all Washingtonians, even Donald Trump himself, who likes a kind of Mar-a-Lago golden lacquered aesthetic, said the terminal building is great. Saarinen's swooping design is good, and we should keep it. Now, I was worried looking at some of these proposals because it seemed to put like a kind of topper on top of that building. And I would hope that they could see the value of preserving that terminal. Now, that said, in the past, they have changed that building. They've expanded it. So there's some room for flexibility historically here. But the concern would be whether they have the kind of selection process that allows really great architecture firms and really great engineering firms into this conversation. We don't know who did those drawings. They could have just been maybe done on AI. He's enlisted a Miami architecture firm to design his library skyscraper proposal for Miami. And it's possible that that firm is going to be involved in Dulles. I would just hope and expect to see they would bring in a company that's really capable of delivering on a $22 billion project. It's just not a small thing that your buddy's boutique from Palm Beach can really necessarily do.
We're not talking about a reflecting pool renovation here, people.
No, that's right. That's right. Not a ballroom. It's an airport.
Listen, I am no airport historian or aficionado. Is this normal? Is it normal to have a president overseeing and being so hands-on when it comes to an airport or transportation hub renovation?
It is normal in Saudi Arabia. It is normal in Qatar. It is not something we historically have done here in the United States. And it's not normal. Washington is a little bit different than other cities. The president's not really going to have a huge role in LaGuardia or Miami or other airport fixes. But design review does happen in DC through the National Capital Planning Commission and Commission on Fine Arts. So there is like a federal role in looking at all of these projects for sure. But the president has just normally got so much bigger things to deal with than the design of the airport.
What other things could be on the president's plate to be managing, if not this mission critical airport redesign?
We've solved all the other problems, so we can move on to this one.
Congress will need to approve some parts of this plan, but are there parts of the plan that the White House can just sort of do on their own without any kind of oversight?
To be honest, I'm not sure that anyone knows some of the answers to these questions because the president has just really thrown out the federal regulations that have guided all of these projects. He demolished part of the White House without asking permission, without seeking permits, without taking any of the number of steps that are enshrined under federal law. And, since then, he's only kind of sped up those actions. You would think that at some point, federal regulators have to step in and be really serious about things like structural engineering and those kinds of issues. This is not a memorial arch that some people might find tacky. It's an airport where billions of dollars are at stake. People's lives are at stake. People's time is at stake. So yes, I do hope that they will take it seriously, and the federal government, independent agencies in particular, will assert themselves. But what used to be a really detailed process is now just a bunch of question marks.
I have a bit of good news to share from our sponsors at the DC Department of Behavioral Health. And that is that DC is turning a corner, and the numbers back it up. Fatal opioid overdose dropped 33% in this city from 2023 to 2024. Now, that is not just data. That's real people and real families that are still together. But listen, the work isn't done, and neither are we. If you or someone that you love is struggling, help is closer than you think. Text Live Long DC to 888-811 to connect with treatment, housing, and recovery support right here in the district. Free Narcan is available at nearly 40 locations across DC because nobody should lose someone for lack of access. And if you're in crisis right now, call or text 988. Know your worth, know your alternatives, know your value, know yourself. Recovery is possible. Find out how at knowyourpathdc.com. My understanding is that the Airports Authority already had their own plan for renovating Dulles. Is that right?
Well, yes and no. So the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, announced a request for information in December. So that's kind of the first step where they're just looking for suggestions about how we could fix Dulles. And some people just sent in emails about this. Some people said, save the people movers, or like, I really hate Dulles. It was more like a comment instead of a question kind of thing, where they weren't really responding to the brief at all. A few firms did put forward some designs, but at the same time, United Airlines and the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority were just building their own kind of master plan. They weren't really following Sean Duffy's program. They were going to do their own thing, and they were going to build the plan that's actually going to happen.
So I want to hop over from planes to trains. I was just in
Yeah.
I was just in Union Station over the weekend, and my understanding is that, that big planned renovation that had a plan that was, to my understanding, approved, just got scrapped by the Department of Transportation. What is going on there?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of information yet on exactly what the agency is thinking, but we certainly know that the Department of Transportation has taken a really dismal view of trains, of cycling, of these projects that I think they associate with kind of liberal coastal modes, if not values, of transportation. And by canceling this, they have scrapped just a ton of regulatory work. But if you kind of flip it and step back and think about how long these projects have taken, you see that there's a real problem at hand. When a plan to develop a train station goes just from initial conversations to design to regulation to actual construction, and it takes years or decades, that's never going to survive a change in administration. Another administration is going to come in and say, no, we don't want to do that anymore. So I think there's this kind of a partisan gap, this dilemma that if you're going to take 12 years to plan something out before you even put a shovel in the ground, you're just always going to end up losing that project. And it ends up wasting a lot of time and a lot of money. Look, that Union Station proposal was controversial. A lot of people didn't like the way it assigned train track improvements, what it prioritized, whether it would make room for high-speed rail. Some critics would say that the design, the huge expansion of the station was not necessary. Putting those aside, I just think you're never going to be able to get anything done if it's going to take 12 years, 20 years of conversations before a shovel goes into the ground.
Are there next steps that we should be looking out for when it comes to Dulles and Union Station?
Yes. So at Union Station, they've announced that they're forming a kind of public-private partnership to look at opportunities for expansion. I haven't spoken to Doug Carr about this. Doug Carr is right now the kind of Union Station train boss. He's the president or CEO of the Union Station Redevelopment Corporation. And Doug Carr, he really developed Moynihan train station at Penn Station in New York before coming down here. And I don't know, you were just there the other day, but tell me if you agree. I think the difference is night and day. I think Union Station is busy. The retail is full. We could have a whole separate conversation about that. But I feel like there's been a real revival at Union Station already.
I totally agree. From the time before that I was there, was looking a little dismal. When I was there just over the weekend, it was busy. Retail was popping. I think I read, I don't know if this is right, it's top of my head. Aren't they taking out the Sbarro and making it an Andes?
Yeah, they closed Sbarro. They're bringing in Andes. So to give you the backstory, and you probably already know some of this, I'm sure. You remember how they had that lawsuit and went through eminent domain with the retail operator? When they did that, Amtrak took over the retail section from a company called Ashkenazi Acquisition. And once that happened, you start to see a lot more companies or a lot more retailers coming back in to Union Station. So that's been, I think, really the big impetus there. But I do think, to answer your original question, yes, I do think things are looking up for Union Station. I mean, this is a real setback on dreams of adding, high-speed rail, of expanding Amtrak on the Northeast Corridor. So that's something that we're going to want to talk about, I hope, someday in the future, because I'd really like to see that happen in my lifetime. With Dulles, I don't know. They're, saying that they're going to be done in 8 years. That means they need to have started yesterday. But there's not an architect attached to this. As far as we know, there's not an engineer attached to this, as far as we know. The plan, what Donald Trump showed at the White House, was a big model and some kind of AI looking drawings. That's not enough to get started. So if they're really going to try to totally rebuild Dulles by 2034, totally rebuild it by 2034, then they really got to start now.
It is just generally a good reminder how what you think should be kind of basic, boring issues like transportation do kind of get layered into these, culture war conversations. While you're hearing Sean Duffy talk about DEI bike lanes, and then I was hearing a spokesperson from the Department of Transportation say, the common sense approach to the left's belief that everyone should ride a bike to their shoebox-sized apartments to eat crickets to achieve a phony climate agenda. And I was like, he's got to be talking about us in D.C.
He's talking about us. Yeah. I mean, I do ride my bike to my shoebox-sized house. I do not eat crickets, though. So we got him on that.
Although there is a restaurant that serves ants as a side dish that I enjoy. So he might have me on that one. But I guess it's just a good reminder that these projects that should just be kind of boring and by the book kind of become this larger plank of, something that kind of feels like a war on a certain type of citizen here in DC.
Yeah, DC gets put under this harsh spotlight, and especially when members of Congress are not actually pursuing any legislation or able to advance agenda they start looking at DC and start thinking about what bills can we pass about the residents of the District of Columbia. We get into a certain kind of silly season with that stuff. And things like moves to like pull up bike lanes near federal lands in Washington is that same kind of thing. I wish we could step back and talk about this as safety and economy, because transit is ultimately about safety and economics. And having bike lanes, having metro rail, having safe buses, these are all things that make the city more productive, make it a better place to live, a better place to visit. And a lot of people do that. So it would be nice to have more transit conversations that were super boring instead of being so spicy. But that doesn't seem to be the season we're in right now.
Well, Kriston, thank you for being here. Hey, maybe I'll see you in the new and improved Dulles in just 2 years' time. Who knows?
That's right. That's right. I'll see you at the airport.
That is all for today here on CityCast DC. And if you enjoyed the show, share it with your friend who only flies through Dulles. You can rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.